This episode isn't just another weekly rundown of chaos. This one's personal. Because when you've got missiles flying across oceans, soldiers in our own cities, and protests scheduled for the 4th of July, you start to wonder, who's really calling the shots? And what are they aiming at?
That's right. And welcome back to Data Dissonance, where we don't just watch the news, we dissect it, debunk it, and occasionally drag it behind the proverbial woodshed. I'm Brian, your unapologetically MAGA co-host who still thinks free speech is worth losing a few friends over.
And I'm Daniel, holding the line for every working man and woman who pays taxes, loves this country, and remembers when public service meant serving the people instead of manipulating them. This week hits hard, and we're diving deeper than ever.
I'm Rachel. You can think of me as the referee between these two war horses. I'm not here to pick sides, I'm here to bring clarity and maybe call out BS when either side starts playing flag football with the facts.
Tonight's episode, America's boiling point. We've got boots on the ground in LA, missiles flying overseas, and a movement that thinks protesting the 4th of July is the best way to celebrate freedom.
Plus, we'll dive into cosmic chaos from a solar flare that cooked half our satellites and confused half the nation into believing Mercury's in retrograde again.
And the stock market continues its anxiety spiral, which is weird, because apparently nothing says financial health like war, inflation, and student debt forgiveness on repeat.
This is Troops, Flares, and Fragile Feelings. Buckle up.
So let's set the table. Israel launched a targeted strike last week after Intel confirmed an Iranian proxy cell was planning a coordinated attack on civilian infrastructure. And now, the world is once again pretending to be shocked. This isn't escalation, it's reaction. A country under siege doesn't wait for diplomacy when the next explosion could be a school bus.
Exactly. And let's be honest. People act like Israel just wakes up looking for someone to bomb. They've got a wall of enemies on all sides, and Tehran has been poking that wall with missiles and drones for years. There's a difference between aggression and survival. Israel didn't choose this fight. They just decided they're not going to lose it.
But that logic only works if we're willing to pretend there's no cost on the other side. Every missile that hits a target over there isn't just a point on a military scoreboard. It's a funeral. It's a family. And while I get the defense argument, I also think we've forgotten what diplomacy actually looks like when force is the only language anyone speaks anymore.
I hear that, Rachel, but I also know this region better than most talking heads. Iran doesn't want a peace table. They want leverage. They fund chaos and sell martyrdom like it's stock options. And if Israel didn't act decisively, they'd be seen as weak. In that neighborhood, weakness doesn't get you peace, it gets you erased.
I think people forget how calculated Iran is. This isn't just some religious dispute, it's strategic chess. They test boundaries. They count seconds between reaction and hesitation. Under Trump, there was no hesitation. That's why things were quieter. It wasn't because we had peace. It's because they were too scared to move.
And fear might bring quiet, but it doesn't bring stability. It just puts a cap on a boiling pot. Eventually, it spills over. And when it does, it's the civilians who pay the price. Not the leaders, not the clerics, not the command posts. Just families. Over and over again.
Fair. But let's not act like the alternative's working. The West keeps calling for restraint, while missiles fly into kindergartens. What are they supposed to do? Send thoughts and prayers. Sometimes you use words. Sometimes you use warnings. And sometimes you use airstrikes to remind people you're not dead yet.
And if we're being real here, the reason Israel's doing what they're doing is because they couldn't count on us anymore. Not under Trump, but under Biden. This administration made us look weak, confused, and apologetic to the very regimes that hate us. We spent years lecturing our allies while kissing up to our enemies, and it sent a message. America's not leading anymore. That kind of cowardice doesn't bring peace. It creates power vacuums, and in the Middle East, a vacuum means war. Trump showed strength, and like it or not, strength is what keeps wolves at bay.
And maybe we should stop trying to be the world's therapist and start asking what a sustainable peace actually looks like. Because what we're doing now, arming everyone, condemning no one, and pretending we're still in control, that's not leadership. That's autopilot with turbulence ahead.
I'm all for peace. But when peace means pretending your enemies aren't building the weapons they'll use to bury you, then no thanks. Israel saw the writing on the wall. They didn't wait for permission, they acted. And whether you like it or not, that's what survival looks like when the world stops listening.
So while the protests rage, the media spins, and half the country can't decide what bathroom to cry in, America just did something bold. While everyone else was virtue signaling and waving flags for TikTok likes,
Trump dropped bombs.
That's right. Over the weekend, the U.S. lit up Iran's nuclear program. No committee, no pandering, no BS, just action. And whether they like it or not, the world just got reminded who the hell we are.
Over the weekend, the United States bombed Iranian nuclear facilities in what's being called the most aggressive military strike since the Soleimani hit. And like clockwork, the media's spinning it as reckless.
Yet the same media didn't blink when Obama bombed Libya without congressional approval, or when Biden hit Syria with zero oversight. So what's different this time? Oh, right. It's Trump.
What's insane is how quickly people online started defending Iran, a regime that brutally oppresses women, executes political dissidents, and funds every major terror group in the region.
Let's also be honest. Israel's fingerprints are all over this. And if you think this strike wasn't coordinated with Jerusalem's intelligence services, you haven't been paying attention to the chessboard.
And while the left screams about legality, they ignore that the War Powers Resolution gives the president 60 days of flexibility before needing Congress. This wasn't a coup, it was legal leverage.
Meanwhile, Iran won't respond with tanks and jets. They'll go dark ops, they'll go cyber, and they'll use American political division as their most valuable weapon.
We've entered a new phase in the Middle East. And this time it's not about sand or oil, it's about influence, legacy, and whether America still has the spine to act before it bleeds.
And if you think gas prices are high now, buckle up. Because anytime the U.S. shows strength, the markets panic and opportunists exploit the narrative to make a quick buck while blaming the wrong guy.
The worst part? Most Americans are more emotionally invested in trending hashtags than understanding how fast this could spiral into a three-front conflict if China and Russia decide to get spicy.
The real takeaway isn't whether the strike was right or wrong. It's whether we're ready for what comes next. Because Iran isn't going to take this lying down, and neither are their proxies.
This strike was about deterrence, period. And if we don't start showing strength again, we're going to get walked all over by regimes who aren't afraid to play dirty.
People think this is about Trump flexing, but it's not. It's about a global power vacuum, and like it or not, the US just filled it with bombs and a very loud message.
We may not like the idea of conflict, but we better start facing reality. When diplomacy fails, action speaks louder than words. And Tehran just got the loudest warning possible.
And let's not kid ourselves. Every president has had their moment of military aggression. But the difference now is that half the country is rooting for America to fail if it's not their guy in the chair.
It's not about party anymore. It's about survival, credibility, and whether America still knows how to act like a superpower in a world full of wolves.
Sick of unsolicited virtue signaling in your inbox? Wish you could block your cousin's 14-paragraph diatribe on sustainable tofu? Download Freedom Shield, the world's first AI-powered spam blocker for ideological nonsense.
Freedom Shield detects and deletes any message that includes late-stage capitalism, toxic masculinity, or the phrase, as a marginalized dragonkin.
Now with Patriot Mode, filters out soy logic and automatically responds with a bald eagle gif.
Does not, unfortunately, block unsolicited shirtless mirror selfies. You're on your own with that one. So, while we're all down here throwing headlines at each other and setting fire to common sense, the actual sun, yes, the giant nuclear furnace in the sky, decided to throw a fit. We're talking a full X-class solar flare that jammed GPS signals, scrambled satellite comms, and even grounded flights over the Atlantic. And you know what? Nobody saw it coming. That should terrify us.
What terrifies me is the fact that we built our entire civilization on fragile little orbiting toys that can get knocked out because the sun burped too hard. We're so obsessed with digital convenience that we forgot nature doesn't care about our Wi-Fi, Rachel. One good solar punch and we're back to 1973, except softer and with no rotary phones.
And that's the part that hits me hardest. We've got people who can't navigate to the grocery store without GPS, and suddenly that signal cuts out because the sun sneezed, and they're acting like it's the apocalypse. You can't build a society so addicted to screens and then get shocked when the lights flicker. That's not resilience. That's idiocy.
It's more than idiocy, it's exposure. We're exposed, wide open, no backup. Planes were rerouted mid-flight. Military channels were jammed. Emergency frequencies disrupted. And what was the official response? A press release and a shrug. We spend billions on gender studies in space, but apparently forgot to put sunblock on our satellites.
Preach. This country's ready for digital ID rollouts and biometric passports, but it can't handle a sunspot. Makes you wonder how fast everything would collapse if the grid went dark. People laugh at preppers until they're cooking ramen over a candle and trading toilet paper like gold bars.
And let's talk about government readiness, or the lack of it. No warning systems kicked in. No national alert. Half the air traffic controllers found out on X. It's like we're betting the future of our nation on good luck and vibes. One solar storm stronger than this one, and we're talking full infrastructure collapse.
And the scary part is, this wasn't even the big one. Scientists say a Carrington-level event, like the one from 1859, could take down entire power grids for weeks, maybe months. Now ask yourself, how long would this country last without the internet, power, or Uber Eats?
I'll tell you how long. About 3 days. After that, it's panic, looting, bread lines, people asking their Amazon Alexa how to start a fire and crying when she doesn't answer. That's where we're headed if we don't start building some kind of analog fallback.
You know what I did? I dusted off my shortwave radio, made sure the batteries were fresh, and double-checked my map drawer. Because if this happens again, and it will, it won't be the end of the world. It'll just be the end of everyone pretending they were ready for it.
Honestly, I think that's what makes me angriest. We've had warning after warning, cyber attacks, infrastructure threats, now solar interference, and the people in charge keep acting like tomorrow will always be fine because today was mostly okay. That's not leadership, that's denial with a pension.
Hungry for freedom? Starving for sovereignty? Then sink your teeth into the all-new Troop Burger trademark. A triple-stack monument to masculinity served with tactical tater tots and a milkshake that salutes before melting.
Over 4,000 calories of pure liberty. Comes with a bib shaped like the Constitution.
Also comes with a free EKG if you finish it in under 5 minutes.
I'll take 2. So here's the situation. Federal boots are on the ground in Los Angeles. We're not talking about vague oversight or clerical support. We're talking full homeland presence backing ICE during targeted enforcement ops. Naturally, the media lost its damn mind, crying military occupation before the first Humvee rolled past a Starbucks. But this is what law enforcement looks like when local leaders refuse to lead.
I'm old enough to remember when enforcing the law wasn't controversial. But somewhere along the way, we let the phrase sanctuary city become a moral shield to ignore federal mandates. That's not noble. That's not progress. That's fragmentation. When cities start rejecting national law, we're not United States anymore. We're just states pretending to get along while actively undermining each other.
I get where both of you are coming from. I do. But let's not gloss over the optics here, because they matter. You send troops into an American city, and people remember every time government force went too far. Even if the mission is clean, the presence alone reopens old wounds. We can't act like history doesn't color perception. And when perception turns to fear, you lose the room fast.
The room was already lost, Rachel. These local officials weren't enforcing the law. They were openly obstructing it. They built policies that protected criminal behavior under the guise of compassion. So yeah, the optics aren't pretty, but you know what's uglier? An ICE agent in a body bag because a city council wanted to score woke points.
I don't think most people understand what it's like on the ground. I've talked to officers who've had to conduct raids without backup because local PD was ordered to stand down. That's insanity. You don't fix broken systems by handcuffing the people tasked with keeping them from collapsing. At some point, the feds had to step in, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice.
And that's the exact point I'm afraid we'll miss. You can be legally right and still politically stupid. You can justify every troop on that street, and it still doesn't mean people won't feel like they're being occupied. You don't change hearts with helmets. You change them by proving that the mission protects more than it disrupts.
Then maybe those local politicians should have done their jobs before it got to this point. We wouldn't need troops if cities weren't deliberately turning themselves into safe havens for criminals. That's not compassion. That's complicity. You don't get to cry police state after you spent years turning your city into a legal black hole.
And I'll add this. Nobody wants military optics on American soil. But let's be real. This isn't a tank rolling through a peaceful protest. This is tactical support for operations that are already in motion. ICE didn't become the boogeyman overnight. They were vilified by politicians who found it easier to demonize law than enforce it.
Still, the presence of federal force should never feel casual. That's the line I'm drawing. The more normalized it becomes to see soldiers in neighborhoods, the easier it is to forget what makes this country different. I want security, yes, but I don't want it at the cost of forgetting who we are.
And I'd argue that remembering who we are means enforcing the law even when it's uncomfortable. Because if we don't, we're not keeping peace. We're just delaying the collapse and calling it progress.
So the No Kings movement isn't just a flash in the pan. Turns out they're planning a second wave of nationwide protests for July 4th. Same slogans, louder hashtags, but this time they're going straight for symbolism. And you know what? I'm torn. I understand their frustration. Really, I do, but I can't help thinking there's something deeply contradictory about staging an anti-authoritarian march on the day we celebrate our freedom from tyranny.
That's because it is contradictory, Rachel. These people scream fascism while live streaming protests on Chinese-owned apps from $1,200 smartphones, sipping oat milk lattes in cities that would collapse in 48 hours without federal funding. They're not fighting oppression. They're cosplaying revolution because they've never actually lived without liberty.
And I think that's the heart of the problem. We've raised a generation that thinks discomfort is oppression. A parade with flags becomes a dictatorship. A speech they disagree with becomes violence. We've traded actual resistance for Twitter threads and sidewalk chalk. And now they're offended that the 4th of July still means something to the rest of us.
But here's where I push back. Just because someone feels unrepresented doesn't mean their anger is invalid. Yes, the theatrics are messy. Yes, the messaging is fractured. But under the cringe-worthy chants and bad graphic design, there are people genuinely worried about the future of the Republic, and we dismiss that at our own peril.
I'll listen when the message has a backbone. Until then, what I see is an emotional flash mob calling for a system overhaul without offering a single functional replacement. No economic policy, no plan for unity, just vibes, rage, and a TikTok link. This isn't rebellion, it's adolescence with a bullhorn.
I think there's also a generational divide here. A lot of these protesters weren't even born when we watched the towers fall. They don't remember what real fear feels like. Their worldview was shaped online, not on the streets, not in a draft office, not at a factory. So when they see something powerful, like a military flyover or a flag being honored, it hits different. To them, it feels foreign.
And maybe that's on us. Maybe we failed to pass down the why behind all this, the flag, the anthem, the holiday. If they only see the symbols but not the sacrifice, then of course they're going to misread the whole pageant. We've been too busy arguing to teach. That's how movements like this gain traction.
I'm all for teaching. Hell, I think every school should be required to teach the Constitution, word for word, no edits. But what I won't do is stand quietly while they torch the meaning of Independence Day because their politics don't match the calendar. The 4th of July belongs to all of us, not just the loudest, angriest activists on the feed.
Agreed. And if they want change, let's talk about it. But let's do it like Americans, with debate, with ballots, with policy, not by hijacking the one day we're supposed to set aside our differences and remember what we fought for in the first place.
Maybe the real revolution would be finding a way to protest with your country instead of always against it. Because being loud doesn't mean you're leading, and being angry doesn't mean you're right. Sometimes it just means you're lost.
Have solar flares fried your Wi-Fi again? Tired of losing power every time the sun gets emotional? Introducing Sunshine and Solar Insurance Trademark. Coverage includes solar flare damage, cosmic ray anxiety, and partial protection from Mercury in retrograde-related breakups.
Also includes a government-issued tin foil hat, stylish and secure.
Common sense not included.
Every time I think we've hit the bottom, they find a new way to dig. I'm not even talking about the stock market anymore. I'm talking about reality. I walked into a grocery store yesterday, and a gallon of milk cost more than the gas it took to get there. That's not inflation. That's economic terrorism with a coupon code. And somehow, they're still smiling on cable news, like everything's on track.
That's because their track leads straight to Davos, not your damn driveway. They're not living in our economy. They're gaming it from a penthouse with catered talking points and insider stock tips. The system's not broken. It's working exactly as designed. It was never meant to lift you up. It was meant to keep you running on a treadmill that feeds their power. And you're supposed to clap while starving.
And what kills me is how they make us feel like the failure. Like if you can't afford rent, it's because you didn't hustle hard enough. If your kid's sick and you can't pay the bill, it's because you bought avocado toast 5 years ago. We're not in debt because we're irresponsible. We're in debt because the system sold us a lie, wrapped it in patriotism, and dared us to question it.
I remember when crypto was supposed to save us. Peer-to-peer power, decentralized freedom, right? Now it's pump and dump influencers and shady billionaires cashing out, while the rest of us hold empty bags and tax liabilities. It wasn't revolution, it was rerouted. They took the dream, put it in a box, sold it back with a logo, and told us we were lucky to get in late.
And the banks? Let's talk about them. They gamble with our money. blow it all in some Icelandic derivative scheme, and then come crawling to taxpayers like we're their mommy. But when we need a loan, suddenly we're a risk. If that ain't the definition of predatory hypocrisy, I don't know what is. They privatize the gains and socialize the losses, and they call us entitled?
Meanwhile, real estate has become the Hunger Games. Corporations buying up entire neighborhoods with cash offers, while families get priced out of starter homes that look like condemned sheds. The American dream used to be a house with a yard. Now, it's a 12-month lease. And a prayer your landlord doesn't read Reddit. You're not failing. The game is just rigged beyond repair.
And then they tell us to invest. Invest in what exactly? A market that eats its young? A job that fires you with a Zoom link? A 401k that dances like a drunk uncle every time the Fed sneezes? I'm investing in myself now. Skills, community, food, tools, a purpose that isn't dictated by some corporate death cult. I'm done waiting for permission to survive.
You know what I trust? Dirt, land, ammunition, water. My ability to build, fix, grow, and defend. That's my portfolio now. They can keep their gold-plated stocks and their digital shackles. I'd rather have calloused hands and a clear mind than $1 million in the bank and no soul left to spend it. This economy was built for parasites. It's time we stop feeding them.
The thing is, people aren't lazy. They're done. Done being lied to, done being gaslit, done pretending this slow-motion collapse is just a rough patch. It's not a phase. It's a reckoning. And the ones who survive it won't be the ones with the most money. It'll be the ones with the most truth, the strongest communities, and the fewest illusions.
And when the dust settles, I'm not going to miss the system. I'm going to miss the people who broke free too late. But for the rest of us, we'll rebuild something worth handing to the next generation. Something rooted in honor, not hustle. Something real. Because when the machine dies, what's left isn't weakness. It's a chance. And I'll be damned if I waste it. Every week we sit here and unpack the noise, the tension, the headlines. But this week hit different. Because underneath the politics and posturing, there's a pattern forming. You can feel it. People are exhausted. Not just from inflation or media whiplash, but from not knowing who to trust anymore. And that's what makes a society fragile. Not the chaos itself, but the loss of shared meaning in the middle of it.
And let me say this plainly. America's not fragile, not yet, but it's being stretched thin by people who'd rather see it torn down than admit it still works. I don't care if you're left, right, or floating in the void. If you think the solution to broken systems is burning everything down, you're not a reformer. You're a saboteur. And we've had enough of those.
I think there's something tragic about how quickly we went from hopeful to hostile as a nation. Somewhere along the way, disagreement turned into dehumanization. But here's the truth. Most people aren't extremists. Most people aren't trying to destroy anything. They're just scared, unsure, and stuck between loud factions screaming past each other. Maybe the revolution we need starts with listening, not to agree, but to understand.
That starts at your dinner table, your local community, your neighborhood, not with politicians or influencers. If we want this country to hold, really hold, it's going to be built by people who still believe in the boring, unsexy work of showing up, speaking truth, and leading where they live.
And don't get it twisted. Patriotism isn't performative. It's not about posting flags or yelling louder than the next guy. It's about standing your ground when it's hard, defending the things that made this country worth bleeding for, and holding that line even when you stand alone. That's what makes you American.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but rage isn't a personality, cynicism isn't wisdom, and burnout isn't bravery. If you're tired, step back. If you're angry, dig deeper. And if you still care, really care, then do the hardest thing possible in today's climate. Stay human.
I've got kids, and every time I sit at this mic, I think about what kind of world I'm handing them. I don't want them to inherit fear and silence. I want them to inherit courage and conviction. That starts with us, right now.
You want a mission? Here it is. Protect truth like it's your home. Guard it, defend it, share it. And don't ever apologize for having a spine in a world that rewards jellyfish.
Because at the end of the day, you can lose the argument, you can lose the election, you can even lose the room. But if you never lose yourself, you haven't lost anything that really matters.
This has been Data Dissonance. Troops, flares, and fragile feelings. We showed up, we spoke loud, and we didn't flinch. If you made it this far, you're one of us.
New episodes drop every Monday. Subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review, unless you're a federal bureaucrat with a pronoun badge and a Tesla. In that case, just keep scrolling.
And hey, if you loved it, tell a friend. If you hated it, tell two. Either way, the signal's spreading, and we're not done yet.
Stay sharp, stay sovereign. And remember, freedom doesn't trend, it endures.
Until next time, Patriots, be kind, be clear, and above all, be awake.